Hello and most welcome to our lecture today. We will talk about ways of getting into the immediate presencing, or why not the right hemisphere. I will give you some starting up hints. This is my first take on it. It needs to be developed more. But let's see. Immediate processing or presencing. Both works kind of well for what the right hemisphere is doing. And this is in contrast to the left hemisphere. The left hemisphere is more like trying to produce an image of what is supposed to be done. So it's more processing than presencing. More processing than presencing. And there is a delay of abstraction. So the left hemisphere has a certain delay. It's not long. We are talking about some parts of a second, maybe just one or two, but there is a presence constantly. Because most of what we perceive is going for the right hemisphere, and then it's rather relayed to the left and then processed, and that takes some time, and that will lead to a sort of stop or halt, so it does not work directly. Something that could be very pertinent here is to say there is a lack of flow. It doesn't go directly. There is a stop before. And this is very similar what happens in language when I get flustered or uncertain about what I'm supposed to say. I will stop and start to try to think what I should say. This pause is the left hemisphere taking over, doing an extraction. Could also be compared to a camera taking a photo. So first you take a photo, click, of the outside reality. Here I'm using the word outside because the left hemisphere thinks it's outside reality. It's not in reality, it's outside of it. But taking a photo of it, then having a look-see, and that takes time. So this is what I'm getting at. We need to make this time delay smaller and smaller, and we need to engage the whole system instead of a partial system. So there are two things: make it smaller and trying to engage the whole vivid living system. And I think for the second thing, something that comes to mind is joy. There is a certain joy when the right hemisphere is engaged. You feel happy, you feel vivid, alive. You also feel in your body somehow. Hard to explain it, but it's like your body feels fluid, it feels you want to walk around like I'm doing here now. You're not stooping over. The tensions disappears as well. So you are more alive, more energized. And you are on your toes, not literally this case. On your toes is that you are prepared, but you don't jump into conclusions. You don't jump into response. See how I use these two words parallel? Because response comes more to the body and the first one comes more to the mind, but they are actually the same thing. The left hemisphere pre-construes reality. Although it takes its time, oddly enough, it pre-construes. So instead of being present in this reality with the whole body, with the wholeness of the inside and the outside together, the left hemisphere parts everything and separates it and sees only one thing at the go and takes away the whole body. All of presencing, perception, hearing, sensing, even such things as breathing. You stop to breathe in that moment when you pause. Many years ago we took an example of a cat. A cat prepares itself. But when it lunges into action, wow, smack, it goes fast. You can't even blink your eye. This is what I'm looking for. This is a way to engage your whole system without being lost inside of your head, outside of time somehow. And what happens? What really happens needs to come back into what is reality. And that's doable. This is also the same thing you see in sports, in football. Miss the opportunity, you miss everything. But that metaphor can actually be misleading to some extent, because we are not talking about only football. We are now talking about maybe thinking, pondering. Also there, you want to have the pondering in the right hemisphere, engaging the whole of your system by training every day to react a little bit quicker. Stop the pause. Trust the right hemisphere to work. It's also, and this is the third aspect of the whole thing, is that we don't trust the right system anymore. Even though it has the name right, we think it's wrong. And we go to the system that we constantly can trust, because we get the feeling we can sort of check it out somehow. And that is the left hemisphere. But the left hemisphere doesn't really see anything. It's blind to the wholeness of reality. It's also blind to all the perception. So we need to cut that out, react directly. Something I noticed in language training is that when people stop to think, they don't do it. So this thinking needs to be afterwards, or I suggest the best thing is to think in action. So thinking is not something you do apart from acting. You can actually think and do things at the same time. I think a couple of months ago, this example with the Italian taxi driver or whatever it was, who makes a cigarette with one hand, drinks a cup of coffee with another hand, has a conversation with a dear old friend on the phone, on the microphone with a service center for the taxi cars, having a conversation with the passenger, and at the same time trying to eat something. This is possible. You can do both things at the same time. And it's not, as the famous singer in Sweden, Magnus Uggla, says, I can't chew gum and talk at the same time, or think at the same time. Yes, you can. But in the beginning it will feel really awkward, because you will be practicing something you've never done before. And this is this very odd thing of thinking in action. Sounds like a riddle, doesn't it? What on earth could it be? The thing to do it is to observe. As a good start is, when you're acting swiftly, don't mess about. Better to risk losing something or forget something, but at the same time you try to put words on things. Use your vocabulary, either internal or external, to talk to yourself. Have this thinking process going on, although you don't want it to go on. You just want to do it, then wait and think like inside your head with a specific Newtonian expression. I call this the Newtonian expression, is that when you go into your head like this, and I need to ponder about this, it tenses up your body and you are no longer present. There is no need for that. You can both eat the cake and have it. And it's more than that. It also means that you can do a lot more than you could before. Because thinking in activity is a more encompassing thinking. You have the linearity and you also have the totality at the same time, because the left hemisphere will still be there. So I think many people testified it feels like losing one's senses, the rationality. But the thing is, the left hemisphere works a lot better when the right hemisphere is the one who's holding the steering wheel. It's a proven fact in neurology as well. The right hemisphere was destined to be first, and then the left hemisphere works as well. There's no coincidence that people had an excellent access to the right hemisphere. For instance, the famed Danish physicist and philosopher, also I would say Niels Bohr. He had a good access to the right hemisphere, but that also made it possible for him to access this algorithmical and highly skilled mathematical work that he constantly did. So linearity will not be lost. Sanity will not be lost. Actually, it's the regaining of sanity. Law and order, if you like, if you want to have an intrusive R in this one. People in ancient times, when we know people were right hemisphere dominated, had an enormous ability to create order. Take the ancient cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. I was there ages ago and had a look-see. It's amazing. The planning. It's in the past and it's also in the future. And the other day I had a look-see at this marvelous city in Afghanistan. On the video, of course, I haven't been to Afghanistan. It's made by the troops who surrounded Alexander the Great. They didn't bring any computers with them or any, not even calculators. But they managed on the Afghanistanian steppe make a perfect Greek city with an amphitheater, a temple for Athena, bathing buildings, communal buildings, private buildings, roads, everything. So the left hemisphere thrives on right hemisphere dominance. And a way of getting back to that, and this is my fourth point, is that learn to react as a child once more. Catch and throw a ball. If you catch it without thinking, you caught it directly. I can say from my own experience, once upon a time, in wintertime when it was very slippery, I felt completely going down some stairs. And I felt in my mind I was completely doomed. This will be the end of me. At least I will break a leg or an arm. But out of nowhere came a hand and grabbed the side of the staircase where there was a railing. I don't know what the hand came from. It was my hand. And the reaction was in milliseconds. That was the right hemisphere coming back into action. Because it wasn't enough time for the left hemisphere to do its ordinary calculations. Now the right hemisphere acted directly, made its calculation much quicker, and saved my body at least. I got some bruises, that's true. You don't get away from those. But I was healed. I felt it like a miracle. But the right hemisphere is the miracle, because opening up the right hemisphere, you will also be able to look into the future. You will actually, because this limited vision that the left hemisphere, the lack of panorama, also applies to past and future. Opening up, taking everything in instead of narrowing down. The narrowing down makes it impossible to know reality. It's a bit like having a tube in front of your eyes, like this. So you get only partial vision. Opening up means getting in more. and the partial vision, you don't lose anything. There is no loss at all in directly reacting. It's all gain, proven by neurology. This is the reason why you should try it. In ancient and modern Eastern philosophy, there is also this idea of wu wei, or unintentional action. I think that would be the natural, wholesome action. When you are a totality, when you feel your feet sort of being balanced on the ground, and you have an even weight. Listen what happens now. Your voice calms down. And all of a sudden, I am on top. And now I have a much wider array of decisions to make. So this narrow vision leaves me with very small choices. The amount of choices is very small. Widening up, you get a lot more. A lot more. And this is, oddly enough, where everything is stemming. The right hemisphere is the foundation of everything. So even the left hemisphere's take is coming from the right hemisphere. But you cannot extract the right hemisphere at all from the left hemisphere's take. I think there's a very interesting parallel here between classical physics and the expanded quantum mechanics. And that is that everything that is done in classical physics can be actually extracted from quantum mechanics, but not the opposite. You cannot have good result coming only from classical physics about the whole world. There is an uneven relationship in between the two. And another thing that is so clear, in phonetics we found that words contain their own meaning. So the idea of trying to have an inner meaning and sort of put that on language is wrong. Because if you present one word with all this fractal intonation, which is much wider, much more complex, says a lot more. Because in intonation you have a fractality that is infinite. Whereas in the regular idea of meaning as something very limited, that one single word has one singular meaning, monosemitis, if you like, that narrows it down until it doesn't work anymore. Because if you extract something, take away the intonation, the pausing, the stress, and your sheer presence that gives the voice life from your heart and your soul, you take away all the meaning as well. And you can get that back because you will feel more alive when you react directly. This joy is a sure sign you're going into the right path. I like especially the metaphor of the archer. In Japanese thinking, that's the idea that you arrange the whole bow and arrow, but in the moment you let the arrow loose, you are loose yourself. You don't have some preconceptions of where it should land. You let it land where it lands. This sort of felt lack of control is exactly what you should strive for. Because then you will regain a much greater control and understanding of the situation. It's immense. Kalle maybe has some questions.
Thank you for... So, hello. So yesterday we were in a pond we were three of us, and we can call them balls at each other. So here, let's say that I received a ball from you, but at the same time I have to be looking on my left because I could get a ball from my left, from the other guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So here we could say actually the right side of the brain is working. Well, let's say that we had only one ball, then it would be more left side of the brain.
Yeah.
But let's say that because the right sphere is taking the ambience also. But how do we apply this more to, let's say, speech and so forth? So it's a bit of thinking, but where does the go let's say the frontier between left side of the brain? So I suppose I can answer this myself. Perhaps the right side of the brain describes the ambience and so forth with metaphors, vivid description, so forth.
Yes, exactly. You get metaphors, you get a more figurative language, you get, I think also you get more of the ancient words, because modern left-handed talking is very modern. It takes away these archaic words. I think nowhere in human times has language changed so quickly. It has adapted to the left idea of all words are being sort of equal. So all the nuances, all the fractality, all the granularity of language is disappearing. And so is the intonation. I think about all these young people who has this very blunt intonation you hear these days. Like scrolling, it sounds the same. Almost like they try to imitate the idea of the meaning coming from the inside, inhabiting the words like a sort of hauntedness. They are haunted. Jacques Derrida took up this specifically. That's beside the point, but it's in there. Wholeness, wholesomeness, getting better and letting also the left hemisphere work in its mode, I think.
So, concluding I think this is the first lecture where you actually said that multitasking is good, yes. But with of course, depending on the situation.
Exactly.
And we should do like Benini in a movie. He takes on his
goggles, no,
sunglasses. You can describe it.
Yes, he puts on his sunglasses and he drives around at night and have a very long speech together with what he thinks is a cardinal. Not a problem. He finds his way in Rome as well. Multitasking is fantastic once the right hemisphere is in place. Otherwise, you will just tense up even more. So we will be able to do much more things, and we will also be able to relax. We will learn not to tense while doing things. I admit I tense when I do things, but much less today than I did only a couple of months ago, and especially less today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.